Hi everyone, and thank you just so much for being here. I really expected 2.5 people if we're lucky, so can everyone hear me? Great. So this is really our attempt at trying to put service learning into an honours program that I've been involved in teaching from pretty much when I joined Rhodes University. And it's sort of looking at the design and but from a pedagogical perspective. And any feedback on the presentation would be really useful, both for a paper that I'd like to write from it, but also from the initiative itself. Is it clear up on the screen?
Yeah.
Cool. So essentially community engagement, as we've heard this morning, is a balance between social responsibility and citizenship in staff and students in a university. And Bender et al. Argue that community engagement should be integral to universities. It shouldn't be optional. And Bender also asks us to take this responsibility seriously. And I'd like to think that at Rhodes University we do. I know, as we heard from this morning, it's part of our promotion policy, but I think it's very useful in the way it's outlined there, and it's given equal status with teaching and research and professional involvement. I appreciate that. I think I've learned a lot through this initiative. So, what is service learning? It is a teaching and learning strategy which links academic learning with community experience. And I really appreciate the definition of service learning by Bringle and Hatcher. They talk about it as a credit-bearing educational experience. So in our course, the second year of the honours, it's worth 60 credits. It's half of the degree. I don't know why this keeps popping up here, sorry.
We can't see it on the side.
Okay, perfect. Students, these are our honours students, they're in-service teachers, and they work through the project to identify community needs, and they reflect on the needs through the course content, which in our case is educational leadership and management. So it's broadening and appreciating the discipline, but there's also a civic responsibility. And Elam's definition brings in that concept of care, one of the ethical points that was raised earlier today. Core to service learning is experiential learning and problem solving, and Hart calls service learning a powerful pedagogical initiative. So just briefly, the course that I'm involved in it's a Bachelor of Education honours degree in educational leadership and management. It's at NQF level 8. And as I said, our students are not mainstream students. They are in-service teachers, mature-aged individuals. We have one of them in the room with us from a previous year. They study this degree on a part-time basis. They're full-time teachers in schools. In the first year, it consists of foundational courses, research and educational courses. And in the second year, they do their specialism. In my case, it's educational leadership. And we've built the service learning component into the second year of the qualification. In terms of delivery, the honours students come to us for 5 contact sessions in a year. And that's where we do the bulk of the teaching, and the intervention work happens between the contact sessions. So historically, the honours, probably since before 2013, has traditionally been taught through a number of modules, and they've been examined through, in a sense, a type of rote learning, pedagogy of recall. And there's been an introduction to research, but no real independent research project, at most a trialing of research methods. And so what we were trying to do in this course is to disrupt the logic of the honours degree and make a difference in the research that we're trying to do. So, in trying to do this, we've designed the course sort of with 3 different strands. And the first strand is working with the logic of a pedagogy of research, learning, and community. Now, this isn't the norm. Often in the honors qualifications, students do an honors project individually with a supervisor on a particular topic. And what we did is we said we've probably got groups of 20 plus in leadership and management every year. We said they would work as a cohort, a project team approach where they work together using a shared methodology or a shared theoretical framework. And what this does is it offers a community of practice and support for the part-time students. And we design it around an identified gap in the field. And just very briefly, in this case, for the 8 years I'm talking about, we've actually been looking at learner leadership in schools. Why? Because traditionally in education, leadership is understood as an adult phenomenon, it's understood as formal position, and learners are not actually, despite policy, given voices to lead. There's misrecognition. Learner leadership is often misunderstood as the formal position in our RCL. And even in the Representative Council of Learners, there's very little leadership that happens. We have little mini teachers implementing school policy and monitoring discipline in schools. So we have to challenge this view, we argue in our research, about developing voice in learners from any age and as a first stage to teaching about leadership. So that's the first strand in our research design our curriculum design is a pedagogy of research learning. The second strand is looking at community engagement principles. And here we worked with some of the Rhodes policies, and we worked particularly with these 6. And if we listen to the NRF presentation just now, a lot of these principles underpin some of the work that they're trying to get into the NRF. I've highlighted them in red because when I move on to the slide of the actual work we do, you will see that in the design of our program, these principles guided us. So it's planned over time. This is a 10-month project with our teachers in schools with learners. It's not ad hoc once off. Very important, service learning should be linked to assessment and assessment strategies of the course. We've heard about the mutual beneficial principle for the learners, for the teachers, and for ourselves as lecturers. It should be engaged. We've heard about relationships already this morning as being really important. And that another principle is it should be transformative. It should be about social justice. And we've spoken already this morning about the ethical component. So none of this is really new to what we do. The third strand is we used a theory called cultural historical activity theory to frame the work we did, and particularly the concept of formative intervention as understood in the chat tradition. And our aim was to break away what has gone before, and so we planned this really carefully as a collaborative program to intervene in schools, cultivate a democratic learning space for the development of learner leadership. So the postgrad students, our honors students, the teachers, are interventionist researchers, and they were mandated to set up learner leadership clubs as an afternoon experience during the second year of their honors degrees. Learner participation, they are our community members, volunteer to become part of that program. And they are warned at the beginning that it's going to require participation and engagement on their part. So we do see it's important to take on more people at the beginning because we know the pressures of school and after school activities and pressures from home in terms of dropout. As with the CE principles, we worked with a lot of experimentation trying to move away from repetitive and reproductive forms of learning to expansive learning in the chat tradition. And very importantly, these were learner-driven projects. And that's quite hard for teachers who are so used to driving their work in schools. And so it was a challenge for many of the honor students to have to step away and create the space for the learners to actually be able to speak. Very briefly, at the beginning, the learners were working as co-researchers with the honor students to find out what mattered to learners in the school context, in the grades in which they were teaching. So they did a simple survey. It can be by cell phone, voice message, any form to generate data. And this was a notion of giving learners voice, the learners in the club leading that process of developing voice. They went through a process once they had analyzed their data to look at what focus areas they could focus on and which one was doable in the 10-month period. We have data from 95 honors projects, and it's a very small table, apologies, but the most popular area was about English proficiency in the schools. The studies happened in South Africa and also in Namibia, but across both countries, the focus on English and getting English right through developing libraries, book corners, all of that were school change projects that were felt to be interesting. The second were issues around the physical environment of the schools, littering, gardens, beautifying the school, recycling, that sort of thing. And then issues around learner discipline. Drugs, abuse, teenage pregnancies came up as focuses for the school change projects. So very quickly, these were learner-driven school change projects. So the honors students had to keep standing back and creating the space for this to happen. And we were looking for innovative solutions or concepts. Very much Inga strongly uses the term learning what is not yet there. And I think our guest speaker this morning spoke about something hospitality, which I thought resonated rather well with that concept of learning what is not yet there. We don't know what is going to happen through these school change projects. The last bullet is just to make it clear from a service learning perspective is that the course was assessed through assignments. At each contact session, students had to do an assignment on the intervention. And these assignments fed forward into the summative assessment, which was a written research report. And coupled with that was those 3-minute videos that we use in the national competitions, like a 3-minute PhD. We used that idea to say this is a 3-minute presentation on your project. And they presented, and we looked at both forms for the different attributes we were looking for. So just in terms of the benefits, which is another principle of community engagement, these are just 3 quotes from our external examiners over the years we've done the project. The first quote in green speaks to the benefits of the project for the learners that the external examiner could see through the writing of evaluating the research reports. That the learners, there was a sense of cultivation of leadership. I even like the term, at least they were occupying learners, doing something with them, giving them some focus or direction, and possible contribution to society. The purple excerpt speaks to the students, and that they had learned through the project very much about the research process and how to do it, linking the theory of teaching research with actually doing a research project. And then another examiner in the blue speaks about the potential. This was an early report, but it speaks about the potential for publication and communication of the research. And over the years, we have, sometimes with students, been able to publish from the research, which you wouldn't normally be able to do in the small standalone honours programs. But with such a big amount of data, there's stuff you can do with it. And also, I think we've learned more recently in the projects that Sikona at the back has just been involved in, using participatory research methods in primary schools. It was their idea, instead of doing the 3-minute video, was to say, but we have to communicate our research in non-academic ways to our community. And so the idea of the second form of assessment was each student would write a research story, either to the learners or to the teachers in the school or to the principals. Might have been parents, I can't remember now. But 600-word story, translating it, they got feedback on drafts, and that became. And we're now putting that into a booklet that we hope to publish, which will be circulated to the community partners, and hopefully Rhodes will get some marketing out of it if we need to tick that box at all. So just very quickly, I'm almost done. Am I okay? Perfect. We have a whole lot of student evaluations over the last few years, but very much the student evaluations speak to the sense that leadership was developed in the in-service teachers, in our honours students, and they were seen to make a contribution in the workplace. This was a Namibian student saying that she was asked to become the guardian teacher for the LRC in the following year. The blue evaluation highlights the growth in the researcher identity and being able to take the research and put it into practice, but also a development in feeling like they could lead despite not having a position in the school. The red quote speaks to the ripple effect. In this school, learners wanted to be part of the club, and this was how, because of what the club was doing, the other learners wanted to be involved. And the yellow quote speaks to the fact that in one school, the school decided this should become part of an annual event in their curriculum. I have to say it was the only one of the 95. Pretty much there was very little take up. Once the honours students ended, that was the end of the initiative. In Engestrom's terms, that would be fun. These projects do come to an end. But I think there is scope, which I mentioned on my final slide, which is there a way to take this up more formally in schools with students? It's something I grapple with all the time, because I think there's potential with what we're doing. But I do think that we have an improved B.Ed honours degree as a consequence of this. When I think back to 2011 and 2012 when I arrived in Makanda, there's depth to our honours. It's much more exciting. We have a fantastic group of students each year that comes in, and most of them are really keen. It sparks an interest in leadership and an interest in research, and many of them move on and are keen to, there's always financial implications, but keen to move on to do the masters and continue the research, and then to be able to do it more deeply. And I think that's really exciting. But I think there is also definitely an awakening of leadership in teachers and in their learners, and a different sense of a relationship, of an equal relationship emerging between teachers and learners. The point I made earlier about the importance of the academic and the non-academic publications that can come out of something like this. And to say, I think the alignment that we used feels like it's working. There's alignment between the 3 different strands, but we're open to any initiatives or experience that people in the room have to improve, change, grow our course. Thanks for listening in, everyone.
Thank you so much, Prof. Callie, on such an insightful presentation around service learning and an innovative service learning program. And I would like to now hand over to our colleagues with any questions.
Thank you. I was actually a bit tired before I walked in, but you kept me riveted because I think this is such a marvelous project, and I can actually see all the three legs working in unison, if you can give that picture. So I wanted to ask you if this was an elective, or did everyone in the degree have to do it as one qualification? And maybe the second year as an elective, and others did something else. And then I also wanted to ask, because I think it's a very unique approach and very brave. I can imagine taking something like this back to our university. They'll probably lock the door or something. So I was just thinking about your question, and maybe we can chat later on about how would this work in other disciplines. And we do a lot of work in schools, but I think this is so well structured because, as you say, the fact that there's even everything that was spoken about next door is alive in this room. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. Now forgotten your first question.
I think it
Is it
was
an elective?
Is it
about
an elective?
whether
Sure.
I seem to get ideas for all the students.
It's so in our honours, it's difficult. The honours used to be a B.Ed, and then there were 2 electives, so you could do maths and leadership or whatever. And we started this being the leadership, so it was just the leadership module in it. But the curriculum has changed, and now we don't do a basic Bachelor of Education honours. We do a B.Ed honours in educational leadership. So on SACWA and that, it's that. So basically people register, as Ikona did, to do a Bachelor of Education honours in educational leadership. Everybody in our faculty who does the honours does the research in education and educational issues and ideas in the first year. And that prepares them, they come with background. And then we run the full year with our all the education leadership students, and they all registered for that degree. But we do have maths, B.Ed honours in maths and B.Ed honours in science, but they're separate qualifications. But I'm happy to chat over cocktails.
Do we have any more questions?
Well, thank you very much for the beautiful presentation, colleague. I love one thing about the research that you are doing and the module that you have explained now of service learning, because it is a rare research, it is humanizing research. Because often at times we go to communities and extract information, so we've used communities as mines, as if we're mining coal, and then we never come back. So as you were finishing, because I was asking myself a question about sustainability, as to what happens then when the student leaves the school. Is there continuity, is there sustainability? But I think there's opportunities for you to explore on that. Because now it would seem that as much as there was a movement with learners at school, but the learners were now attached to this leader, who is then the student. By virtue of learning, I'm not sure personally if there is continuity, monitoring and evaluation, to what extent even the educators are involved perhaps to make sure that the projects continue. Because some of the projects that your students might have started are the real needs of the school, are the real needs of the learners. But then how capacitated are the learners to ensure that there is movement and the sustainability to change the trajectory generally of school engagement, within these schools. So it's an opportunity as well that I'm trying to raise, but appreciating this kind of research, because it's moving away from the traditional way of doing things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Callie, for that presentation. question. I don't know, I think I lost you in your presentation. So, what is the overarching goal of this BL? Is it to change or challenge the contemporary curriculum, educational curriculum? And if so, has any of these BL honors research been adopted towards revising the curriculum?
Sure, good question. What we did, because as lecturers, we had to be sure that the projects would work, and because we didn't want all our students to fail. So we toyed with playing with the curriculum and thinking life orientation, languages, and then we thought, no, we're moving into schools which are not terrain, and we didn't want to put the teachers' jobs in jeopardy. So we went with the after-school activity, which comes with its own challenges with lift clubs, and we know all the challenges around that. So we did that because we thought it's the safest bet. But in terms of your question around sustainability, yeah, we don't see much take up. I think with our honours group that are now moving into masters, we've got, of our 20 last year, we've got 10 who registered for masters. And I think some of them are going to continue into the next year and try and continue the intervention and monitor it. And I think then I'll be able to answer more of your questions, or hopefully they'll be standing up here next year talking about it.
Sure.
Yeah. But in terms of your question around curriculum, that was my end point, was really to say there's potential here, aside from, for doing stuff in school, it could be, and I know that Sake, I heard somewhere that Sake is doing something with RCLs, and I want to, okay, because then I think there's stuff we can do that because, yeah.